Hello and welcome to the Sketchwave. This is episode 5. If you're new here and you've not been to the show before, we talk all things digital art because we are both digital artists here on YouTube, primarily in the Procreate space. My name is JoelCreate. His name is James Julier. James, how have you been, mate?
Very good, yeah. Pretty busy, doing mainly family stuff, so yeah, all good. How about yourself?
Super busy. I put up a post last week about how I think I was putting out like 8 videos in 5 days, and this week feels like I'm gonna get near there. I've called it factory season, where the conveyor belt's just going and going and going. So I enjoyed the whole process, and luckily it doesn't take too much out of me. This show, I've said loads of times, has spurred me on a little bit, so gives you that sort of mental energy you need.
Yeah.
But we're probably a little bit energized ourselves because WWDC has literally finished about half an hour ago. So we're still digesting a little bit,
Yeah.
and forgive us if we get anything slightly wrong. But there was a lot to take in, and the show itself was slightly split up into two sort of segments. Now, just for clarity, for a lot of people who maybe don't know what WWDC is, because you all own iPads, they're of course built by Apple, and Apple have a developer conference at sort of this time of year every year, where they show a lot of the software updates that they're going to be bringing to the iPad, the phone, the Mac, etc., and so on. And today we're going to focus on a lot of the iPad updates. If you want to go and check out everything else, there'll be full breakdowns with all the tech podcasts. But we're going to focus a lot more on the iPad updates. And I was texting James as we were watching the show, and it was looking very slim, wasn't it, at the very beginning with just the iPad updates themselves?
Yes. I was a bit initially quite disappointed because I'd heard rumors about AI integration stuff. I don't want to jump the gun on that one, but yeah, I'd listened to a lot of YouTubers and listened to a lot of rumors, so I was expecting this to be more substantial, but then it changed. Yeah, there was a story of two halves. Definitely.
Yeah, and one person who stole the show was Craig Federici, I think his last name is. He was so good from the intro to the out. It was awesome. He was my favorite. So, but he stole the show, and that says a lot for the sort of first half of WWDC. So I'm just going to quickly go over a few of the updates, and hopefully some supporting graphics as well will be on screen for you. The first part will be customizing your iPad. So you're going to be able to update a lot of the app icons. Your iPad and phone, etc., can do light mode and dark mode, and you're going to be able to implement that into your app icons as well, which I thought was really cool, and pick an accent color. So a lot of you will be quite creative people anyway, so you may want to change your app icons to light mode with a red accent to every app icon, and customize it accordingly to your style, which I thought was a really cool update. They're playing a lot of catch up these days, I think, to Android in terms of customization, but doing it the way they want to do it. So yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing.
They always say that they do things best, don't they? They wait until everybody else has jumped the gun and then they kind of do a better version of it. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's necessarily better, but yeah, it's kind of streamlined to be a few tweaks, isn't it? So it's not overly complicated. It's just a few things that you can do, which is probably what most people will need, I think. So
another update is coming to the Photos app as well. There'll be going to be lots of customization in terms of it picking out highlights of your sort of trips or locations or people, which you'll be able to customize a lot more, which is going to be good. And you can also filter out a lot of content as well. For me personally, I take a lot of screenshots, so my phone is constantly rammed, and likewise my iPad. So to filter that out will make things so much more aesthetically pleasing. One thing that I think is really a quite useful feature, which just in general everybody should know, if you struggle, I'm going to use my mum as an example. If she was struggling with a certain feature on her phone or didn't know how to do a certain thing, but we weren't together, there's going to be a new feature where you can share, play, and remotely share your screen to somebody else, which they'll actually be able to interact with as well. So if you have a problem or you need a grandson or grandchild or anyone to help you, you can share your screen to them, and it will be something where they can aid you through the process. Before we actually started, James, you had a really good idea for this, didn't you, in terms of the share play feature?
Well, certainly on Patreon, one of the things that I offer is a one-to-one sort of lessons or assistance with people's projects. And as it stands, they've got their Procreate open on their iPad, and I've got my Procreate open. And when they're asking for me to, explain how they could achieve certain things, it's quite difficult logistically to do that. Whereas the idea that I could tap into their iPad and use their version of Procreate to amend their image on their iPad in sort of live, time is pretty awesome. Actually, it would make the idea of kind of one-to-one tuition work exceptionally well. I think it's going to be something that could be really useful.
You'll have to let us know if you actually utilize that in that exact use case.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really interesting to see how it works, and I think it just will aid, like you say, your process so
Definitely,
much, being able to sort of actually take control, and much like a more traditional one-to-one teaching of people turning up to like workshops and stuff like that, it would be far more interactive, which would be great. Another point, we've only got 2 more really for the iPad OS updates. A calculator app. That says a lot about the sort of beginning half of this event, a calculator app, as well as...
I'm really excited about the calculator app. I'm not going to lie.
Well, it's this integration into some of the other apps that is actually interesting, how it can be taken through into notes. And if you scribble an equation and then just hit equals, it will just pop in the answer straight away. You don't have to be in the calculator app. So its integration across a lot of different apps will be really useful for a lot of people.
Personally, when I'm trying to work out like my finances and things like that, I do scribble them on paper, and I struggle to juggle all of those calculations on a calculator, ironically, whereas if it can do the job of a piece of paper and the calculator all in one, brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that was it, wasn't it? That was it. We were literally saying, are we going to cover this? Are we not going to cover this? But there was a massive second half to the event, which completely focused on AI. And I know this topic can be quite infuriating to some people, but it's actually very exciting about how they are integrating it deeply into the system. And they call it Apple Intelligence. We're not going to get deep into sort of technicalities. I want to talk to a general audience that just want, we'll get some really awesome features coming later this year. And a lot of these features are all coming in the fall this year. And they may not even come to you straight away in your region, because they may be in beta testing to start with before they come out fully to the rest of the world.
Also, I think you need to have an M1 iPad and above, don't you, in order to be access.
Was it A17X and newer? I think it was, wasn't it? I do remember seeing an A series chip, because I was quite surprised that they went as low as that.
Right, fair enough. Yeah.
But that may be something.
There could be a lot of people with iPads that are using, following our tutorials, for example, that don't have an iPad Pro necessarily. So it could it might not be accessible to some people.
Well, it won't be accessible to me currently with my iPad. My iPad, I think, runs off of the 50A15, I think it is. Right. So for me, I won't necessarily get them, but just more of a reason to upgrade, I guess. Game's the game. So the AI tools, they gave it a nice little slogan, which is AI for the rest of us. So at the minute, you could probably say a lot of these AI tools are being sort of utilized by enthusiasts more than anything. But these are going to be tools that are going to be deeply integrated into your phone, your iPad, and your Mac. And we've got quite a few of them just to go over, really. And I just want to sort of discuss them and see what your thoughts and feelings are on them, as well as my own. But one of which I thought was really interesting is writing and how you can rewrite and proofread across the system. Now, I think I have to give a little bit of context to how this actually works. You'll write an email, and then throughout the whole system, if you were to say highlight that text of your email, it will then provide you with like a little menu off to the side that will ask you how you want to rewrite this. You can make it less formal, just clicking the button less formal. You can make it more professional. You can even ask it to simply just rewrite it, and it will go through the whole thing. It will also be able to proofread the entire email. Now, I am using the example of an email. These features are actually across the entire OS, so across the entire iPad. So if you write something in notes, it can do the same thing. If it's in email, you can do the same thing, likewise text messages and so on. So I think I know you use your iPad a lot for everything, and I think that's really cool that like you can have that deep level of AI even on your iPad to just enhance your everyday experiences of certain things like that. And for me, I'm someone who's, I lean closer to math than I do, written English and whatnot. So for me, I really, really like those features just to give your email a little bit of polish here and there. And I think it will help a lot of people as well. Maybe, people who struggle with if they're dyslexic or anything like that. Just a quick click of a button, quite literally one click, and you can proofread the whole email, and it'll fix all of the sort of grammar issues in there. We then, following on from that, you can actually also, in the listing of emails, you will be able to see, sometimes you see this subtitle, don't you? And it's just like the first line of the email. Instead, it's now going to summarize that email in that same space, which for me, for work, will be fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I fear that might result in more of my emails I don't even click on and open. I'm notorious for it at home. I have sort of like thousands of unread emails, so it's only going to increase that problem for me. Well, there you go.
But something you'll be able to integrate into emails and text and everything like that is emoji, or as they call it now, a new version called Genmoji.
Yeah.
Where you'll be able to create a custom emoji with multiple variations. So again, just to give some context, if you're writing to someone, and the example they used was, if you need a custom emoji for something, you could literally write a T-Rex on a bicycle, and then you'll get 4 different variations, and you can just drop that in as an emoji alongside your text or as a sticker or anything like that. And this kind of goes for a lot of these features that we're going to talk about today. For me, I tried to look at it on the side of not like, generative AI and damaging this and damaging that. I tried to look at it on the sense of that's actually really fun. Like in the use cases it's going to be used in, I thought that was particularly like a fun feature, just to do something unique and I guess be a little bit creative, but in a really easy way.
I think in some ways it just kind of fills in the remaining gaps of our communications. I don't think it's going to take the place of full art images or illustrations. It's creating a more visual world for all of us. If every time we're sending a text message, it's just a bit richer with images. I think that could be pretty cool. I don't see that as a threat to us as artists necessarily, because they're just fun things that are going to be very personal to the individuals. It's going to incorporate photos or reinterpret the photos of the person you're sending it to even. I mean, it's pretty awesome. It was very impressive. I can imagine it being a lot of fun to sort of send personalised emojis to your friends and family, and actually incorporate images of yourself or images of them in it as well. I think it's pretty amazing stuff.
I can see this being used though, like in a really annoying way, where if people's kids get hold of this feature, it's just you're going to get bombarded with custom T-Rexes on bicycles and about 17 different variations on them.
I think we're all going to get a bit crazy with it for the first few days, few weeks. I think people will go a bit nuts over it, but I think it will simmer down to a kind of use case where people use it a bit more selectively. But I can definitely see it becoming a bit annoying initially.
It will be cool, and I can imagine sending it to that one person who hasn't maybe seen all of these updates or has listened to this extremely valuable show that we're creating today, and when you send that first one, they'll be like, where did that come from? I've never seen that before. How did you do that? And I've got a mate who he's a bit slow to the tech, and I can imagine he would be exactly like that and just be like, where are you finding these custom emojis? Like, where have you got a separate set of them? But yeah, it'd be cool to see how you can, like, how deep you can go. Like, could I, for example, say something a bit specific of a T-Rex in a Man United shirt or in a red football kit that resembles Man United or something like that?
So yeah.
Now, obviously, at some point, it's not going to use logos and stuff for copyright, but it will get very close or just give you a general impression of what that logo looks like. But I think that would be really cool if you can do stuff like that. Like, if a keeper has an awful day, you could put a sloth in a goalkeeper kit or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Just like there's all these random little use cases that you could send in a text to wind friends up or something like that.
I'm sure it'll have limits. There'll be like you said, there'll be some things that you can't do. There'll probably be copyright issues on kind of Mickey Mouse.
Oh yeah,
Disney content and what have you. But yeah, I think in terms of generating images that don't tread over copyright thresholds, then I don't see why there's any potential limit to that. Really, we'll have to see, won't we?
And this is only one of sort of the 2 big updates to Apple's intelligence and this whole new AI update, because one of the sort of the second part of it is actually the image playground. Now, this for me, again, I immediately leaned on the side of this looks really fun, and again, not kind of worried about how it could be used until maybe a little bit later, which we'll get onto. But what is the image playground? So again, another use case. You are in your text messages, and it is your friend's birthday. Now, you can go ahead and create an image. So if you've ever used something like Midjourney or anything like that, or any sort of AI creative or generative app, you can type in a prompt, and a prompt is something like, again, a T-Rex on a bicycle. Let's just use that one again. It will then provide you with 4 images that you can then select and upscale and so on, but it generates them based off of then theme as well. And this image playground will be built right into your phone. And so if it was your friend's birthday, you can go ahead and create an image of them in 3 different styles, which they mentioned, which was you can put it in a sketch or an illustration or an animation style of design. So the sketch ones I thought were very aesthetically pleasing. They're very sort of almost watercolor like with their kind of use of color, which will be really fun to play with when they come out. And you can say happy birthday to that individual. Now it knows who that individual is. And if you've got photos of them in your photos, it also can pull from those photos what that person looks like and put them in the sketch style that you selected. And then if you decide to then say, I want to put them at the beach, so you pick a location. You can then also pick accessories. An accessory could probably be a birthday cake, and it will combine all of that together. So the person, the photos that you took of them, the location, the accessories, and the style, and generate a AI created image that you can just share in your messages with your friends and family. And just to give it a nice personal touch, something a little bit different to just an emoji and a cake that you can share with your friends. I thought it was really cool. What did you think, James?
Yeah, definitely. I can see myself using that. I mean, it's just fun things, isn't it? I don't think it encroaches too much onto artistic territories. I think that it's just going to be used. I mean, it's going to be used so widely that it's going to be very recognizable for what it is, I think, as well. I think there's going to be limits, certainly initially, to the kind of sketch style, the animation style. I think people are going to be able to recognize exactly what it is when they see it, given a little bit of time. So I think it will have a kind of walled sort of sense of what it is. And I don't think it will venture beyond that. I don't know, maybe people will be able to incorporate it within broader context, maybe sort of copy that image and print it out for a birthday card even and send it as a physical thing. Who knows, what the application of it could be. But I'm looking forward to being able to use it in sort of like, day-to-day messaging. I think it's good fun.
I think also sort of thinking about it there a little bit more, the fact that they've limited it to 3 styles to me is really good for almost like general knowledge of this, in terms of, because it's limited to 3, you'll see that style multiple times, and they'll probably be very close to each other in terms of the style. It won't drift too far, that you over time, probably within a year, be able to say, oh no, that's the sketch image playground feature. That's not somebody's drawn that, that's very much generative, which is really important. It's really important that people do know if an image has been created or created by AI. So just thinking about that again, it sort of hit me a little bit there. Now this image playground can actually also be used in your sketches. So this is where it started to get a little bit closer towards us. In your notes app, for example, if you've written out a lovely document and one of alongside your paragraph, you've created a very simple illustration of a bridge maybe, and we're talking very simple sketches here. There's going to be a new feature where you're going to, I think it was referred to as the magic wand, where you're going to be able to circle that sketch. It will pull up the image playground. So again, this is where this is really built in, that the image playground itself will actually be an app that you can go in and play and create content, not necessarily through messages or notes, but just directly in that app. So again, you can highlight that sketch in your notes app with the wand tool, and it will pull up the image playground, and then you can again pick the style again, the location, and anything else that you need to accessory wise for that, and it will generate an image and give your document a beautiful illustration to go alongside your text, which I thought was absolutely awesome. Like as a for students, this is going to just look amazing, and all your documents that you submit will just look fantastic, especially like.
Do you think it will be used to illustrate? I mean, I think they did mention like a children's story, so writers. I guess it does encroach on our realm, our world. If illustrators are no longer as required, if an author or a writer can just do a quick sketch of something they're imagining in their story, and then this technology can just generate an image. It's concerning if that's your bread and butter, if that's your living as an illustrator, and then we're increasingly now this is going to become mainstream, isn't it? This isn't aimed at those people that are enthusiasts or just really like experimenting with technology. This is going to be for the masses. So every other person, every other author who likes to do kids stories is going to have access to this and at least try it out, and it may be that it's enough. I don't know how varied it's going to be. It might end up creating images that are very similar to each other and have a very house style, like we were saying. But if it doesn't, if it is pretty broad and pretty wide and really responds to the drawings and can put it in all sorts of different styles, then yeah, it could put some illustrators out of work, really. And it is, I suppose that's a concern for some.
If I was Etsy right now, I'd be concerned because for me, obviously you can get loads of custom stuff on Etsy, whether it be illustrations or things made, t-shirts or wood carvings, anything like that. But in this particular sector, I think digital illustrators, and I'm going to put that in air quotes, are going to go through the roof, because I think it's going to go one of two ways. Actual illustrators on those services that do really well, like up until now, who require can do the odd jobs for someone, like you said, like a front cover for a book, or just a quick illustration here and there in an app, in the book, in Pages. I feel like they're just going to get a little bit redundant. Like we spoke about this previously about how there's a lot of value in the actual art and the craft by an artist. But to some people who, they may be making a quick book, or it's a kid's book or something like that, and they never have any expectations to sell tens of thousands of copies, I'll just generate an image in Image Playground and put that into there. Now, what I then worry about is, okay, I feel like then Etsy's then also going to be absolutely inundated with, again, digital like illustrators that I can create you a custom portrait, no problem. Supply me with 20 images of the person so I can bring them into my phone and it will be able to digest that person's face and characteristics. And then I'll create one. Pick a style. What style do you want? Illustration, sketch, animation. And that service is just going to be using the Image Playground. And so you're going to get loads of people almost at the bottom end, and also bring then the demand for the high value artists down. And it's going to get very narrow in terms of the distance between those really premium people and then what everyday sort of regular people can draw before Image Playground came around.
Another scenario just occurred to me. Can you imagine plenty of parents that have, the desire to create a personalized story based around their child? So, rather than just getting a generic book written by somebody else, you could sketch out a story, get, the AI to rewrite it in a more fun way. And then also generate images to go alongside the story. So you could create a personalized story that is about your child, featuring your child and all sorts of illustrations of them. And I think that actually there's a real potential for people to use this to create all of their own original content. I don't necessarily think it will render professional authors and illustrators redundant. I don't know. But I think that it may end up with a lot of people creating their own personalized content because they'll have the tools to make it happen. And it will, if it's clever enough, which it seems like it's going that way, then I think everyone's going to want to create their own books and stories to feature themselves and their children and their family setup. and which is really cool. I think it's quite exciting. But if I was an author and illustrator, I might be a little bit concerned.
Yeah, I think I might have said the word redundant, and that's leaning more towards the extreme side of it.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's going to be less, again, in that great example you mentioned there about parents saying, I'm going to create a custom book for my son who's maybe colorblind. A friend of mine has actually created books for based on colorblind children because he's colorblind himself. So it's like those niche use cases, but he went off and found an illustrator. So if he had the ability to, have Image Playground right now, or when he created those, I imagine he doesn't go to the illustrator, he goes to his phone, and that illustrator then, subsequently would lose a job. So I don't think they demand, like, again, I don't want to go to the extreme, maybe like I did a second ago, just sort of to reel it in, just to say, I think that the job demand will maybe reduce a little bit. And I also think we talk about creativity a lot. I think for parents, as you said, this could actually be really fun and expressive for them. That one, you could do it fairly quickly. Again, if you had a poem, like you said, you could then input it into Siri, which, by the way, Siri can now integrate with ChatGPT as well. So you can send off your request beyond the phone to them, and then they can come back and provide you with results, both in image and text form. Yeah. So you could say, write this poem again, but based on my colorblind child, and provide imagery, alongside it. And I think, like you said, for custom pieces of quick work like that would be really fun. But also, it could spark this whole new level of creativity that you can learn off of those poems and learn off of how those books and illustrations were created, and then maybe go down the more manual creative routes of going, okay, I know I really like that style, but I want to do that. So I'm going to open up Procreate and go down that route now. And then, it could just really spark a lot of creativity, I hope, in people that go, I'd love to actually draw that myself, kind of thing.
Is it going to make everyone creative and everyone an artist, though, and therefore everyone splinters off and doesn't need each other because they can do it themselves? In a sense, because this is one of the things, isn't it? We all have our separate roles in society. I'm not very good at cooking, so I go to a shop and buy a sandwich on route, whatever. I can make a sandwich, but the point stands that people have different skills. Whereas if the technology gives you all the skills that you require in your life, do we need to lean on each other as much? I mean, I know it's a broader philosophical question, but it does raise those kind of thoughts in my mind in terms of not where it is now, but where will it be in 10 years? And we've seen the effect of social media has on society, and what's the effect going to be of making everyone, or putting the power in everyone's hands to be an artist, or to feel like they've created something and have that ownership. How is it going to affect us turning to other people, specialists or professionals with expertise? Are we going to want or need them as much? I think it is something that, not initially, but as you roll it out over a generation, could actually really splinter and change the need for people to turn to each other, which, I don't want to be doom and gloom about it, but it is a concern. I think we're all quite insular and cellular in society more and more with technology anyway. And is this just going to be another layer upon that, where we can be our own experts because we use the technology to assist us? I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that's a concern?
I think it depends on the use case for me. I think if it's someone who their use case is to add graphics to their, their theory pages or anything like that, I think it's great. I love that. I think it would be great for people just to add that personal touch, and they still have to come up with a very quick and easy sketch, but it will allow people that, I know certain people that they feel like they can't draw for a toffee, but but they would love to. And I feel like this would then help them immensely. But I do see what you're saying, because I think if you can put that together so quickly, it almost doesn't give it much value. It doesn't give it much worth. That we've said, I've said about this loads of times now on this show. I think I've maybe said it once or twice every single show, but the value is of creating that, the craft and I use that word every time, is the craft of sitting down for an hour and saying, I drew that. No,
Yeah.
I really put my mind to work and explored my creativity and everything I've seen in my life to, curate that image on paper or your iPad. And I do worry that because you can quickly just put those images together and you didn't have to give much worth to it, that, well, then there's no point. I don't need to go and grab my iPad. And even if I did, what's the point when I can do it in a couple of seconds? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
Definitely, or it inspires people to be more creative, and there's two sides to that, isn't there? You know, it might just spark a sense that it gives you more ideas, and and a polish to it that you think, oh, that's really good. But then I think once you start to open the door to creativity, it just you get flooded with more ideas, and it may be that that's the direction it sends people. But then again, that's going to be the same for creative, people that are already creative anyway. So for you and I, and for people watching who are already creative, it might just enable them to be even more creative. And there's only so many hours in the day, and if you're already inclined to put lots of time into being creative, as it is, I think that gives you a different advantage. And sure, there's going to be people that put half an hour into something and they come up with something that has a polish to it. It looks pretty cool. But I think we're all going to become quite sensitive to what the apps and what the technology of AI can actually do. I'm kind of arguing myself here a little bit to what I was saying earlier, but I think it's true. I think that people that use these tools and spend longer with them will get a deeper and richer end product out of it. So I think it's going to change, and I think there's going to be a lot of really polished looking material that comes out initially that people have been able to do themselves really quickly. But then once we get past that polish and the kind of tricks of AI, then I think that we're going to demand something with a little bit more depth. And I think that if artists are able to use the technology and really dig even deeper using the technology, then it's a bit like if you look at special effects in the movie industry. What we were putting up with in the 80s, people have much higher expectations.
You'll have to break that down for me, James. You're talking to the wrong guy.
Well, so I've heard. No, I was very much alive in the 80s. Yeah, and just what wows you visually in the 80s is not, it's a million miles away. And now we're quite almost to get to the point where even if you can tell it's computer generated, it's no good. It's not good enough. It's good. It has to be invisible. It has to be undetectable for us to be impressed. We have to, okay, we intellectually know it is a special effect, but it has to be so good that we can't really see where the seams are. And so I guess we get more picky, less easily impressed. And that may well be the case with AI tools as well, although it enables us to be surrounded by images that are better and better and better. Perhaps our sensitivity to that quality gets improved as well. And so we expect more. It will be interesting to see over time, over 20 years, for example. It's almost impossible to conceive where this is going, really, and get a handle on the future of this, because it's happening pretty rapidly. So it will be very interesting over the next 5 years, but beyond that, it's almost impossible to predict, I think.
But even when you say there about like special effects, for me, I see people create these scenes in Blender, like it's a 3D modeling software, and then they render it with super realistic details on top. And I look at that and go, wow, that craft of building that. So, for example, let's say I'm going to give an example again of say a street, and then they've green screened it right behind, but somebody has to go in and then build that street all the way down the road, and then apply realistic graphics to it. To me, I look at that and go, wow, that's a craft. And well, first of all, I look at it and think, how did they do that? Like, to me, that it doesn't look like a level that I would ever be able to get to. But I guess that's like art in general, in any form. You look at it in general and you look at, say, the biggest names. It's not necessarily always the biggest names, but, some of the most really creatively gifted people. And you look at that and go, I'll never be able to do that. But unless you start, you will never know. So, I think every form of art has that, in a sense, where there's people that will just look at the final image and make a decision, or there's people that look at it and go, wow, I really love how they layered the paint here, or in Blender they added additional lighting sources here, or all these types of mini individual use cases that I think if you sit and wanted to actually break them down, your appreciation for these things goes through the roof even more, that you go, I want that as well. If I'm honest, this also actually loops perfectly back round to their title for this, because the title reads again, AI for the rest of us. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think that perfectly sums it up, because for it, if 10% of iPad users use Procreate and follow our tutorials, then they're the ones that are wanting to be creative and wanting to draw and everything that goes alongside that. For everybody else, they just want an image that shows their mum in a Superwoman outfit with her age on the front, and that's it. And it's a momentary use case that comes and goes in the chat. Once it leaves the page, it's gone. And it doesn't need anything more than that, I guess. It doesn't need any more, breakdown. It's just a sporadic use of fun and create very simple creativity, and it's gone.
It's true. Does it encourage a little bit like, users of TikTok? I'm guilty. I do use TikTok here and there, or shorts on YouTube. Does it encourage like a fast food consumer of image-based material? Does it discourage people from stopping and looking at things because they know it's a throwaway item? Does it train people to be less reverential for images, in general? Or will people create a differentiation? What is a throwaway item created by AI and what is hand created and human created? And will we develop a sensitivity to the difference? It'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I guess based on the image playground and what we're talking about, I guess that really sort of determines how it will be determined, by how much it's used and how much it's distributed, and if people take it beyond what it was intended for. Yeah, if people are just going to create Instagram accounts with all of their image playgrounds, then, and we see loads and loads and loads of them, then it's going to get to a point where we flick past everything because that's probably AI, and you don't care for it, so you just skip over it. But if it doesn't sort of stretch too far beyond that, let's be honest, actually, at the beginning, the first month that this is out, that will happen. It'll be everywhere. There'll be people trying to, I say con's probably the wrong word, but deceive people in terms of, hey, look what I've got. Hey, look what I made. You didn't make that. And it'll be very obvious after a month. People will be able to say, what are you talking about? That's the new update. But then after that, once it dies down and it's used how it was probably intended, will it kind of all just fall back to normal again?
We'll see. I think that it's going to spread its tendrils into every aspect of our lives. Not necessarily a negative way, but though it sounds like a horror movie in my description, I do think that it will go into every part of our communication, and that could be amazing, really enrich our everyday lives. But I think it's going to spread everywhere. I think this is huge, especially because it's Apple. Let's really think about this. And it's not only Apple; it will be every other company that follows too. Because Samsung won't want to be left behind. Android won't want Android, I should say. Android won't want to be left behind. And so everybody's going to have to follow suit. So what Apple does now, everybody will do. So every smartphone, every tablet, every laptop, every computer will be using this technology within 5 years, guaranteed.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If Samsung have a history of just copying anyway, so that's the second biggest manufacturer, and once they do it, it's everybody will be creating these images in their pockets. The only place we don't want it to go though is Procreate, but at the end of the sort of AI segment, they did mention that for developers there are APIs for this. If people don't know what APIs, essentially it's a language in which developers can then use certain features of the OS and integrate them into their apps, and so sort of bring those features in to keep it simple. And I thought about this. I mean, when I say thought about this, it literally ended about an hour ago. But the more I think about it, I just don't think it's in Procreate's interest to integrate it in any for any reason at all. It would defeat the entire purpose of the app for me. And I initially thought, oh, here we go, but I don't think they will. I really don't think they will.
I think there may be other apps that specialize in bringing that to life. Maybe Procreate will kind of champion the whole authenticity vibe and stick to that. And it's like it's an app for real artists that don't use AI in their creations. But other apps will. I think other people will come along and create art apps that do integrate this technology and allow you to use your own ideas, but enhance your work and kind of pimp it up into a better version. I'm convinced that if it works and they can do that, then somebody will do that, and people will therefore use it. You know,
I would argue there's already better AI apps already out there that don't need this image playground to work. If anything, integrating image playground would probably take that app backwards. There's an app called Draw, DRAWW, I think it is. You have on one side, much like this call now, essentially, on one side you have your canvas, and on the right side you have your AI generative model ready to go. If I tell it I'm drawing a landscape, and I draw in, and I mean like the easiest mountain you've ever seen and trees, and you don't have to necessarily draw trees. You can just sort of create like a triangle and say that that's a forest, and draw a mountain and give it some white on the top, and it knows it's snow. And on the right hand side, it's then generating an image based off of your quick and easy sketch, which to me is way better than these the image playground from what we vaguely know. You know, I think the image playground is very fun. That's what it's definitely leaning towards more so.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's already apps in the middle, in that middle spot, ready to go. That I don't think they're going to get any more attention from this. And I feel like the more we talk about it in this show, that I'm leaning more that it is just for someone to send a happy birthday with an interesting image, a Merry Christmas, and the Merry Christmas is, you know, a grandchild in an elf's costume, you know, something like that. That they go, oh wow, that's really cool, and that's it. It's done. You know, it's come and goes.
I do think that people do value within the kind of fine art or even the illustration. If it's done by a human, we value every brushstroke and every mark and every gesture. I do think that that's true. But having said that, we're going to be a little bit skeptical sometimes when we see an image, just like you were saying, because people can use the technology to, you know, put across the idea that they've generated the image entirely, even if they haven't. I do think somehow we're going to have to figure out how we prove that something has been achieved authentically by human hand. I mean, I guess in apps like Procreate, we have the replay function, but I think even that can be gamed. So you can have layers that you put in there that are invisible and don't show up on the replay.
Very true.
You know, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's just a way of assisting you towards your ideas and your concepts. But it does blur the line in terms of how authentic and how much skill the artist actually has. It raises a lot of questions, and it'd be interesting. I think in the future there's a good likelihood that even Procreate may find a way to integrate it in a way that is announced, or I don't know. I'm hoping that it is ring fenced and it's protected from AI. I don't think it is going to enhance people's creativity in that sense. In terms of the skills, anyway, I think it's still going to be important that people do learn the skills. I think if it takes away the need for skills, then that would be a sad development. I think it is important that you understand the skills and develop them, because it's developing the skills that really kind of informs your ideas. I think, and it's like the repetitive kind of meditation on technique and skill. that I think opens creative pathways in your brain. I think it's an important part of that process, and to just bypass that and just go from, oh, I've got an idea and the technology will just do it for me. I think that it will stunt people's ability to think beyond the obvious. I think that the non-obvious ideas come from sitting and meditating and working on something for hours and putting in the painstaking work of that. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe, it may get to the point where you can ask AI to make it more creative, blend this style with that style, and, come up with something even more imaginative. We're not quite there yet. I think, you can worry too much about these things. And like I say, everything evolves. So we'll evolve with the technology. We'll evolve to demand different things, and we'll evolve to see its limits, I think, as well, and recognize it probably. I don't know about yourself, but I'm pretty fine-tuned and can spot quite a lot of AI images now.
Yeah.
Creative AI images are quite easy to spot at the moment, and then it may change. It may get a bit more sophisticated, but there's a certain grain to it. I think the way it kind of forms all the little particulars or the particles of the image, even when you get an I can't remember what the word was now, but like an upgraded version, an upscaled version of it. Even when you look at an upscaled version of it, you can see that there's a certain quality to the little particles of that image in it, and you can tell it's AI. It doesn't, as such, have yet. I think just the way it kind of, it's almost like things just gravitate towards each other. I don't know how the technology really works, but it is almost on a particle basis, where you can see things clustering together, and you can see that in the end result. Whereas I don't think it's mastered the art of textural brushstrokes too much. Maybe I've not dug deep enough on that front, but I've not seen as many of images that really have a authentic texture to them. Not as of yet, anyway.
If you ever want to test your ability to spot AI images, just go to Facebook. If you go to Facebook and you scroll through that feed and you get randomly given images, the amount of times I've seen Jesus in a bag of like crisps or potato chips or whatever people want to call it all over the world, and you sort of look at it and go, there's something there, and then you kind of just look back for a second and go, oh, it's a generative image that is then clustered together and put the chips in a certain way, and it's now Jesus. Or symbols in multiple different religions, and it's like different landscapes. It's just, you see roads bending with each other that they go to dead ends, or there's random islands of like bollards in the middle of the road, and you're like, that logistically makes no sense. But the comments section is, oh wow, amazing. This is amazing. And I think when you were talking, I was thinking, all of this leans a little bit towards like almost education. And as you said about being able to spot what's AI and what's not. Now, I know at some point you will never be able to tell the difference. It will get to that level. But right now, Facebook typically has a slightly older audience. And I think the amount of people that fall for those AI images on that platform kind of maybe shows that how the younger audience are so much more aware of AI and generative content that they can see it. And we know it, and we understand what it is, and give how much value we want to it. But older generations,
a superpower of the youth, won't it? That they can spot AI when older people just can't.
And they just think, oh wow, you'll get shared a photo from your grandparents or something, and be like, yeah, that was done in like 3 seconds, and was done in a tool. I can do one for you right now. And I guess it's almost like that we see this stuff as much as possible to then be able to spot it, but then at some point the penny will flip and we won't be able to tell anymore. But like all of this, it just comes down to value for me. If you want to give something a second's thought and you get the image out, and that's great, and you share it, if depending on how much value you put on that image, that I made this, this kind of thing, then that's how much value you put into it. But if you take it for what it is, and it's a very quick and easy shareable image just for a bit of fun, then that's exactly what it is. But if you've sat down and drawn something for hours on end, its value, you understand its value, and when you explain it to people, they will be able to understand the value based on how you are expressing yourself about, I sat down and I had a great time. I just got lost in it for hours. And that gives value.
I think that it's going to bring a lot of, I think it's going to enrich people's lives. I think it's actually a positive in the short term. I'm excited to use it myself. And it's the only way to judge it, isn't it, really? If you can imagine yourself using it and you're excited to give it a go, then it's inevitable that everyone's going to, well, not everyone, but a lot of people are going to feel that way. And I think it's a positive. I think in the short term, it's a positive. We'll have to, reconvene and debate this in another couple of years and see where we're at on that front. But for now, I'm excited to give it a go, and I can see it being used and being fun.
And all of these AI tools, it's not just the image content that we've discussed. There are loads and loads and loads of updates that are coming to your phone. We've just covered the ones more art-based, iPad-based, so there's tons more to look at. So potentially go and watch WWDC if you've never watched one before. There's lots to take in, and all of the updates, again, will probably be out on your devices later on this year. And yeah, there's a lot that's going to come, and I think it's good for general tasks for sure, like helping you understand, will I have time to make it to this restaurant based on, certain factors that you also have in your emails and so on. And I think that's extremely useful.
And Siri has come of age. I think Siri's been lagging behind massively for years now. And so they've finally brought Siri. And it's going to take a big leapfrog ahead of all the competition by the looks of it, for now.
Absolutely. Guys, we hope you've enjoyed this conversation about WWDC and all of the updates that are coming and all the AI updates. I am actually going to tease one video that I will be releasing on Saturday, which is a AI and Procreate video. So I'm gonna tease that a little bit now for people if you want to go and check that out on Saturday, and maybe we'll discuss it in the next week's show. James, thank you as always for a great conversation. Guys, if you've enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to the show. As always, there is a form in the description down below. If you would like us to cover a particular topic, you can submit a question down below, and then we can go ahead and cover it on the show. And also make sure to follow us on our socials as well. But as always, thank you so much for enjoying the show with us, and we'll see you next week.